This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from ConstructionLeadingEdge.com and ConstructionBusinessAccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and it's my job to help you, the construction business owner, eliminate chaos and maximize revenue. Here's what you're going to get out of today's episode. You're going to learn several days worth of insights. Here's what you're going to get. You're going to find out, what do some of the biggest commercial property owners want? What's coming in the future? What are they concerned about? And what do you need to know about what they're looking for in the future? You're also going to hear about some really brilliant strategies on problem solving. How do you solve problems? How should you think about changing your workflows in your business? You're also going to get some brilliant insights from an executive who's worked for companies like NBC, General Electric, etc. You're also going to hear about some big announcements coming from ProCore, and then I'm going to tell you about what is perhaps the finest organization I have ever seen. So if you're looking for something to help with disaster relief, help veterans, then I'm going to tell you about an organization that I met. And all of this comes from my time in Phoenix, Arizona last week at ProCore's GroundBreak 2019 conference. I spent 2 days listening to keynote speakers that I'm going to share insights with, walking around, talking to folks from all the different software companies, this disaster relief organization that you absolutely need to know about. So in this episode, I'm going to boil it down, and I'm going to give you about 2 days worth of highlights and insights in hopefully 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll get to that in just a few seconds. Before I forget, if you want more resources, I have loads and loads of resources for you as the construction business owner and leader. Go to ConstructionLeadingEdge.com. You can schedule a free strategy call with me if you're a business owner. You can also get resources. Click on the resources button. There's a big red button that says webinars and trainings, and there are hours and hours of free resources for you. And I'll tell you about some free videos that I want to get in your hands at the end of this episode. So, first of all, let's talk about, what do commercial owners want? I sat through a fascinating discussion led by Riggs Kubiak from who's the founder of Honest Buildings, and he interviewed or had a conversation with Lisa Picard, who's the CEO of EQ Office, which is owned by the Blackstone company, and she's formerly from Skanska. Her company, she as the CEO is responsible for billions of dollars of office space and some really big projects. And then Michael Turner, who's the president of Oxford Properties, was also in this chat. So combined, these two leaders probably account for over $10 billion worth of real estate assets. And the conversation was about what's coming in the future, what are you interested in as project owners. So these are some really fascinating insights. So let me just run through some of the insights that I took away from listening to this conversation. First of all, is this: trust allows project owners to be more nimble. All right. Lisa Picard said this. She said, I'm not interested in sending out RFPs. I'm sending out RFCs. She said, I'm tired of sending out RFPs and getting these dozens of pages, if not hundreds of pages of RFP responses that nobody's going to read. I'm sending out RFCs. And an RFC is a request for a conversation. They're looking to have conversations. They're looking for people they can trust. And Michael Turner shared this quote, and I forget who actually said this. I've heard it before, but he said, business moves at the speed of trust. And this is becoming more and more apparent. This is becoming more and more important in commercial real estate development. They're looking for more collaboration in the future. And why is that? It's because construction costs are going up, but real estate developers like Oxford Properties and EQ Office, they're still trying to solve for a number. They while the construction costs are going up, the lease rates are not going up. So their customers, their tenants who they're leasing space to, they're not paying a commensurately higher amount of rent that goes up with construction costs, if that makes sense. So they're trying to solve to a specific number, to a cap rate that makes sense for their investors and for their tenants, and they're doing that by developing more relationships, being more collaborative. Hopefully that makes some sense. So what that means is they're looking for teams that they can work with that can design to a budget and can also speed up the time of delivery for projects. They want to spend less time sending drawings around. All right, I'm going to talk about the process in just a few minutes. But they're looking for contractors who they can develop relationships with, contractors they trust, because ultimately they recognize that it's not about, this is interesting, okay? If you think that it's all about low price, then you need to understand that it's not, especially as things become more competitive on their side. It's all about relationships. And Michael Turner said this. He said, I can't think of a single time when we went with the low bid contractor on a project. They're not looking for the low bid. They're not looking for the contractor who can come in and make the most mistakes on their proposal. They're looking for contractors they can trust, that they can partner with. So trust allows owners to be more nimble. That's point number one. That was my big takeaway. Number two, they shared some really brilliant strategies around problem solving. They shared that as really large institutional organizations, they have some process inefficiencies as well. So they're, just like you might be, they're trying to improve efficiency. It was interesting to hear that as owners and developers, there's a lot of waste on their side in their project delivery. So here's some learnings and some pretty brilliant strategies that they shared when it came to upgrading their process and solving problems. First of all, when it comes time to digitize your workflow, take on a piece of software, somehow upgrade your process of how you do something, then don't just digitize your old workflow. In other words, if you're doing it with spreadsheets, Post-it notes, pieces of paper, don't just transfer your old workflow to digital. That's a mistake. That's a missed opportunity. What you need to do is not just rethink how you're doing something, but really rethink what you're doing. So what that means is start with the outcome that you want to achieve. If something's not working well or you want to upgrade a process, then pause for a moment before you jump in and buy a piece of software or start mapping out a different way to do how you're doing it, and start with what do you want to achieve? What does winning look like? This is what I call operating from right to left. Let's start with the end in mind and then work backwards from there. What does winning look like? What do we want to actually accomplish? So don't just digitize your old way of doing things. Rethink what you're doing, not just how you're doing it. And think of this not as a nuisance or a frustration or some painful process, but think of this process upgrade as an opportunity to not only change what you're doing, but change the culture of your company as well. One of the most brilliant things that I heard was something that Michael Turner shared, and he said every once in a while when we have a specific challenge, then we will have a hackathon. And this is a technique that comes from the tech side. So software companies will have hackathons. And in a hackathon, they'll bring hackers together and lock them in a room, give them pizza and Red Bulls for 24 hours, and they hack. They hack together code and they create something in 24 hours. Some other company I heard about calls it FedEx Day, because by the next day, when FedEx would typically deliver something, you have to deliver something by the next day. So some sort of a solution. And the way that Michael Turner's organization, Oxford Properties, would use this hackathon is they would bring in outsiders. They would bring in people who, let's say, I think the example that he used was, we want to streamline our design process. So instead of just bringing together the people who always worked on the design process, they would bring in people from the outside, bring in attorneys, people they trusted, smart people, but people who didn't necessarily deal with the design process on a daily basis. So they would bring in attorneys, maybe accountants, bring in software people, problem solvers, smart people, and bring in their outside expertise. Bring in a variety of insights and experience and say, here's our problem, here's how we currently do it. We want you to help us come up with a better solution. So what this looks like for a construction company could be, bring in some of your, let's say you're a general contractor and you have a specific problem that you want to deal with, then put that problem, clearly define the problem that you want to tackle. I would, if you're going to spend the time doing this, I would make sure that it's a real lead domino for you. In other words, it's a problem that when you solve it, it will either make other problems go away, make other problems irrelevant, or make other problems easier to solve, just like a lead domino. If you're going to spend the time doing this, then let's focus on a lead domino. And then bring in people you trust. Maybe they are subcontractors. Bring in an engineer, bring in somebody for a few hours and pay them, perhaps, but make it worth their while and say, this is the problem. Clearly define the problem. Clearly define what the objective is, and then let these folks go to work on it and take advantage of their various and diverse experiences, and you'll probably be amazed at what happens. So I thought the hackathon idea for open source problem solving was pretty intelligent. So those are some highlights from what owners want, and if you want to know, if you want some more insights on what project owners are looking for, then go check out episode number 10 of the Construction Leading Edge podcast, which is an interview with the Construction Owners Association, the executive director at the time of the Construction Owners Association, to find out what do owners want. And then also go check out episode 57, where I share some of my experience as an owner's rep. And I was an owner's rep for, 8 or 10 years, managed a couple $100 million worth of projects. So in episode 57, I talk about what a good owner's rep should be doing and how to interact successfully with an owner's rep. All right, next I want to talk about some takeaways from a keynote speech given by Beth Comstock, whose resume is pretty damn impressive. She was an executive at General Electric with NBC. She's a director at Nike. She's an author of a book that just came out in 2018. And she talks a lot about change. She spent a lot of her career bringing about change in really big organizations like General Electric, NBC. So she talks about change and what to do when you're trying to solve problems. So the first thing that she suggested, which goes along with the hackathon idea from Michael Turner, is to bring in outside sparks. She used the term bring in outside sparks. So when you have a problem that you need to solve, bring in people from the outside. Bring in people who you trust, who are intelligent, that have your best interests in mind, but maybe they don't necessarily know all the nuts and bolts of what you do. But that's a good thing, because sometimes when you're so close to the problem, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? So it's good to bring in outsiders. I have been in so many conversations where someone will tell me this problem that they've been banging their head against the wall for months on, and I'll ask, what about this? Have you thought about this? and it had never occurred to them because they're so close to the problem. So sometimes just bringing in an outsider, bringing in some folks who you trust, who are intelligent, and you know have your best interest in mind, they'll help you. So bring in outside sparks. The second idea that she shared was what she called agitated inquiry. Agitated inquiry. Bring in some passionate critics. Bring in people who are the devil's advocate, people that will intentionally poke holes, intentionally ask hard questions, intentionally agitate the problem a little bit. Because, look, you have to ask yourself, what is your goal? Is your goal to be smart, to feel good about yourself, or is your goal to come up with the best answer and actually solve a problem? All right. So if you want what Ray Dalio, the author of a book called Principles, if you want an idea meritocracy, if you want your organization to be about the best idea about what is right and not be so concerned about who is right, then you're going to have bring people in to be the person who brings the agitated inquiry. And you may, if you don't have someone who is by nature an agitator, then pick somebody on your team and say, all right, you're going to be the red team on this. Maybe there's a situation you can take a red team approach, and you can say, all right, your job is to poke holes in this. I know you like the idea, but for the next hour, you're gonna red team this, and it's your job to find the holes in this plan, to be that agitated inquirer. So red teaming, it's very important. This could work on initiatives, like how you're updating your workflow. It could be hiring key people. You can red team key hires. You can red team your project schedules. You can red team your anything. Red team, I'm a big believer in business continuity. You should, if you're a sizable organization, you should be red teaming your entire business continuity plan and have somebody asking, hey, what's going to happen if this? What if our website gets shut down? What if we can't process our, what if our banking gets hacked? What are we going to do? What if the power goes out at our building? That sort of thing. So red teaming is an interesting strategy for solving problems, but task somebody and tell them to take their rose-colored glasses off and be the red team. Look for problems, poke holes. Another strategy that Beth Comstock shared was this one. Quote, tell me something I don't want to hear. She would often say this to people on her team. Tell me something I don't want to hear. Tell me what's not working. Tell me something I don't want to hear. Again, it's not about feeling good, looking good. It's about coming up with the right idea. And then I loved this. She said, we need to think differently about when things go wrong. And when she was at one of the organizations, General Electric or NBC, she got so tired of what she called the success theater. This theater where people would stand on stage and share their great wins and their brilliance, and people would applaud the success. She realized that applauding success isn't all that helpful to an organization. So she had FailCon. She actually had an event called FailCon, FailCon. It was a conference where people from that organization came together and they shared their failures, and they dissected failures, and they applauded failures. And they realized that it's not all about successes, it's about failure. You are going to fail. So let's talk about your failures. Let's not just applaud successes, but have a FailCon where people say, hey, I tried this, it didn't work, here's what didn't work, here's why it didn't work, and here's what we're going to do differently next time. So imagine doing that with your team, having a FailCon, because what do you learn the most from? Failures or successes? Success really isn't a great teacher, but failure is a great teacher. And if you're not dissecting and applauding failure in your organization, and you're really missing out on some good education. So we have to think about defects in a process as a learning opportunity, not something that needs to be hidden or concealed, but something that needs to be applauded and dissected. I'm reaching a little bit here, but going back to manufacturing, I read about the total quality movement from, I think it was Toyota, but one of the big changes in the total quality movement was this idea that on the assembly line for automobiles, every person had the opportunity to pull the string or pull the cable and stop the line when there was a defect. See, prior to that, the common standard was to hide defects. And because defects meant somebody was going to come breathe down your neck, point fingers, blame, and terminate, lose jobs, punish, etc. But the people behind the total quality movement in the automotive industry and the manufacturing industry realized, hey, defects are learning opportunities. We need to know when there are defects. We don't want people to hide defects. We don't want to ship cars that have defects that will turn into really expensive and potentially dangerous situations and recalls. We want to know when there's a defect. So think about defects differently. And it's really the same way in your organization. You want to know if something's not going right. That's why you want to ask that question. Tell me something I don't want to hear. I've even heard one leader, I heard an interview that they would instead of walking onto a job site or walking into an office and saying, hey, how's it going? To which most people would respond, hey, it's going great. They would ask, what's one thing that's not going well? Or they would ask the question, what's not going well in our accounting division? Or what's not going well with time tracking? What's not going well with our concrete crew? So they would ask a specific question to find out what's not working well. Not so they can laze the target with the blame bomb, so to speak, but so they could improve things. So one of the questions that came up that Beth addressed is, how do you beat paralysis in this time of change? And she brought this up to begin her talk. She said, things will never be as slow as they are right now. Things are constantly changing, getting faster and faster. The rate of change is improving. So how do you deal with that? How do you beat paralysis of analysis? She said, the key is to move forward based on what we know and then change when new evidence shows up. So you have to move forward based on what you know and then recognize that you will change when new evidence shows up. This is similar to the Colin Powell decision-making process. He called it the 40-70 rule, which meant that you never make a decision before you have 40% of what you need, but you never wait until after you have 70%. So if you have between 40 and 70% of the information you think you need, make the call, start moving, and then course correct as you go. That's what that means, to change when new evidence shows up. Because you have to understand, there's a cost of inaction. Every day that you're not acting on an insight or a competitive advantage, there is a cost associated with that. So to recap and tie these things together, there's a common thread that runs through the talk from Lisa Picard and Michael Turner, as well as Beth Comstock, when we're talking about change and being more nimble on large projects and project owners wanting to be more collaborative and having FailCon and red teaming problems. The common thread that runs through that is one word, and that's trust. And Beth Comstock put it brilliantly. She said, trust is the linchpin to innovation. So if you want to have an innovative organization, then you really need to work on building trust with your team. Otherwise, you won't be able to red team things. You won't have people who bring up defects because they'll be trying to hide them. So build trust and understand that trust is one of the best and most powerful motivators of humans. When we feel trusted, when you feel trusted, it's amazing what you'll do. You'll think about how you feel when a boss trusts you or when a client trusts you, right? You'll run through walls for them. So if you want to do anything, one big takeaway, if you do nothing else, if you take nothing else away from this podcast, then figure out how to build a high trust organization, because trust is, well, business moves at the speed of trust. And trust is the linchpin to innovation. And if you want to survive in these times, you have to innovate. Therefore, you have to have a high trust organization. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about are 3 big announcements that ProCore made at GroundBreak 2019. The first one is the release of ProCore for owners. ProCore has been huge for general contractors and subcontractors and specialty contractors, but now they've provided the capability for owners to do capital planning, to look at their entire capital planning process. And for example, this would have been huge for me about 15 years ago. I was managing projects for Procter & Gamble, and we had a large capital planning process across multiple campuses across the entire country, and it was all done on spreadsheets that didn't talk to each other. So it would have been amazing to have a system like this for capital planning purposes, especially for large real estate developers, owners of multiple campuses, corporate owners, etc. This functionality for owners will also provide owners with the ability to look at their entire portfolio, look at all the projects across their portfolio, and look at what's really most important to them. How are their projects tracking with schedule, cost, quality? What are the open issues? And it'll give them the visibility into all their projects in one place and practically in real time, as opposed to waiting for reports to be updated weeks or months later, which is not all that helpful. It really gives owners certainty. And that's huge. That's one of the biggest issues that project owners have, is the lack of certainty. And when an owner has certainty, they can release more projects. They can deploy their capital, and they don't have to be quite as tight. They can be more nimble. So, big announcement number 1, ProCore for owners. Big announcement number 2 is ProCore Analytics has been released. And this is pretty cool. ProCore Analytics provides the opportunity to create dashboard reports so you can slice and dice your data in ways, basically any way you can imagine. I chatted with the analytics team for a few minutes and looked at some of these dashboard reports that they can create, and it's basically anything that you can imagine. Any piece of data that ProCore tracks for you, you can look at it. You can look for trends. You can create exception reports, red flags. You can be notified when certain things happen. So it really gives you, as the project executive or leader or business owner, it gives you the insights, gives you the certainty, so you know what's going on in real time. So a couple of examples that were really interesting with analytics. You can see, let's say, after you can look across all of your projects and you can see which trades you're having the most change orders with. And that can inform the decision. Let's go back and tighten up how we're developing our scopes. If there are things that are consistently getting missed, you can feed that information back into your estimating process and make some adjustments. Also, there were some pretty interesting examples shown with safety. You can track areas of the body that are being injured the most. If you are having lots of hand lacerations, if that's an issue, then that can inform what safety equipment you deploy. If you're having back strains, you can make some changes. So you can take information, use insights to inform how you're putting projects together, what sort of training you're doing, what sort of equipment you're providing, how you actually do the work. Pretty fascinating stuff. And then maybe my favorite announcement from ProCore is the ProCore community. This is something that I recognized about a year ago. That community is huge. One of the most consistent bits of feedback I get from construction business owners goes something like this. Todd, I don't have anybody to talk to. I'm lonely. The only people I can talk to who know what I'm dealing with are my competition. And I can't really talk to them about my cash flow struggles. I can't really talk to them about the problems I'm having because it could give them a competitive advantage. And also, how can people tell me, I want to know how other people are solving this problem. I have an idea for how to solve it, but I'd really like to know if somebody has tried this before. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to make some big mistake. If somebody else has already invented this wheel, then I'd like to know that is the case. And I'd like to find out how they did it. I'd like to learn from other people's failures and other people's mistakes, not just my own failures. And that's what the ProCore community has done. They've set this up. It's an online forum. You can go in and ask questions. If you're a ProCore user, I think it's free. You can ask questions. You can join groups. You can participate in local meetups as well. I think you can create your own groups. And you can probably even facilitate local meetups. So not only can you get technical advice on how to use ProCore, but you can be part of a community. And this is huge. In fact, in a couple of days, I'm going to be having my own meetup, the Advance, in Lexington, Kentucky. And it's 2 days of live training. And yeah, the content's great. I would like to say that the content that people will hear at my Advance events is the best thing, but honestly, I think the best part is the community. I think it is the relationships, the interaction that happens outside of the meeting room, before the meetings open, in the bar, at dinner, in the car, at networking opportunities. It's really about the relationships. So if you're a ProCore user, I strongly recommend that you get involved with ProCore community, and you can just Google any of this if you want to know about owners, ProCore for owners, or ProCore Analytics, ProCore community. Just Google whatever you're interested in. It'll pop right up, and you can get into that. And if you are interested in learning more about ProCore and you want to get a conversation set up, and or if you'd like to chat with me about it, and I've talked with numerous people at ProCore. If you're a commercial contractor, frankly, I think this is one of the best things you can do for your business if you don't have a consolidated, integrated system for managing projects and financials. And if you'd like to find out more, let me know. Just shoot me an email, todd@constructionleadingedge.com. I can tell you what I know about ProCore, and then I can put you in touch with the right people there to get you a demo. But send me an email, todd@constructionleadingedge.com, if you want to find out more about ProCore. Or if you want to send me a text message, send me a text to 859-667-2015, and just tell me what you're looking for. You want information on the Advance? Would you like information on setting up a free strategy call with me? Would you like information on ProCore? Just put it in the text, and I'll get back with you and let you know. So those are some of the big takeaways, just some of the big takeaways. There were also several other things that could come up in subsequent episodes. Mike Rowe had some fascinating insights on recruiting for the construction industry, and I might talk more about that. Now, so if you want, I still have to talk to you about this fantastic disaster relief organization that's helping veterans. Before I do that, make sure and go to constructionleadingedge.com for loads of resources. If you want to set up a free strategy call with me, you can do that on that page. You can get lots of resources by clicking on one of the red buttons there. And I'd love to get some free videos in your hands. So if you'd like to know the secrets of successful contractors, what is opportunity cost? What is operating my business right to left? How do I grow my business? How are the big companies doing it? Then I want to get some free videos in your hands. You could go to constructionleadingedge.com/owner and get access to those free videos. So what is this amazing disaster relief organization that is helping veterans? It is Team Rubicon, and their stated purpose is to be the best disaster relief organization in the world. So what they do is they help people on their worst days, whether it's flood, wildfire, tornado, earthquake, hurricane, humanitarian crisis. They respond to disasters. They are rebuilding homes. They're helping with flood recovery, international medical relief, and they are providing veterans with an opportunity to serve, to continue serving after they take off the uniform. And it's all funded by donations. So this is a fantastic organization. It's called Team Rubicon. I would encourage you to take a look at it, check them out. I'm going to be supporting them however I can, especially if you are a veteran. They were started by a team of 8 military veterans who went to Haiti to provide a response after the earthquake in 2010. So it all started from there. And this is a fantastic organization. Go to teamrubiconusa.org to find out more about that. But I'll be talking about Team Rubicon a lot in the future because they're just a fantastic organization. So thank you so much for listening. My name is Todd DeWalt from constructionleadingedge.com. And hey, if you want to schedule a business breakthrough session with me, if you want to talk about some of the roadblocks you're dealing with and find out how I can help you, find out how I help my coaching clients in my one-on-one coaching program, then go to constructionleadingedge.com, click the red button that says schedule a free call or something like that, and we will get on the phone. So thank you so much for listening. If you could leave a rating or a review on the podcast player of your choice, that would be fantastic. That helps get the word out there to the rest of the interwebs, and let me know how I can help you. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Thanks so much.